2012. Night. A 300-foot yacht in the Mediterranean. There is a man on this deck who holds no Malaysian government post, sits in no cabinet, and does not appear on the payroll of the fund he is about to become famous for. His name is Lo Taik Jo. The world will know him as Joe Lo. According to later United States Department of Justice filings, this is one of the rooms where a national development fund was treated like a private ATM. He never ran that fund. Prosecutors say about $4.5 billion moved through it anyway. This is the story of how, and of the night, the man at the center of those filings disappeared. If he never held the job, how do prosecutors say the money moved? Start in 2009. Malaysia creates One Malaysia Development Berhad. 1MDB. On the brochure, a sovereign development fund, oil wealth in, power plants and a financial district out. A country's next 50 years. The official face is Prime Minister Najib Razak, who chairs the advisory board. The unofficial face, prosecutors later say, is a young fixer from Penang, with a Wharton year and no title on the door. Joe Lo is in his late 20s. He does not work at 1MDB. There is no contract that says fixer. What he has, according to people who later cooperated with the DOJ, is access. He can get a meeting, he can throw a party that makes a new fund look like it already belongs in the room. That is the paradox. The most important man in the story, if you believe the US filings, is the one with no official job. The first alleged siphon does not look like a robbery. It looks like a handshake. September 2009. 1MDB announces a joint venture with PetroSaudi, a private oil company that talks like a state. $1 billion is meant to find energy and build the future. According to DOJ kleptocracy complaints, roughly 700 million of it was redirected within days to a Seychelles company called Good Star Limited, a vehicle prosecutors allege Joe Lo controlled. Good Star is not a power plant. It is a name on a wire. Once that shape works, prosecutors say it becomes a method. A few years later, 1MDB pays more than $1 billion to a British Virgin Islands company whose name is almost identical to Abar, a real investment arm of Abu Dhabi. It is dressed as an options buyback. Abu Dhabi's real Abar would later say it never received that money. The look-alike, according to US filings, was a costume. See the pattern. You do not break into a sovereign fund. You stand next to it. You give the wire a reason that sounds like statecraft. Then, the money leaves through a door that looks like policy. By 2013, 1MDB is breaking ground on a new financial district in Kuala Lumpur. The cameras roll. But, according to prosecutors, the brochure and the bank records had already parted ways. Where the money went next did not go to a mattress. It went somewhere that made it look earned. You have already met the yacht. Forget it for a minute. The yacht is what the internet remembers. Prosecutors say the yacht was never the machine. It was the costume the machine wore. By 2014, that costume is impossible to ignore. A super yacht named Equanimity, more than 300 feet, valued in US forfeiture filings north of $250 million. A bombardier jet, more than $35 million. A penthouse in New York's Time Warner Center. A mansion on Hillcrest Road in Beverly Hills. Canvases attributed to Picasso, Monet, and Van Gogh. The IRS later listed these as assets bought with funds, allegedly diverted from 1MDB. This is the picture designed to hypnotize you. A guest on a teak deck. Champagne. A country far off camera. But here is the twist. A yacht can swallow a few $100 million. It cannot, by itself, move $4.5 billion. What it can do is change the subject. It turns a sovereign fund story into a rich kid story and makes investigators look like they are chasing a party instead of a pipeline. The pipeline, according to DOJ filings, ran through three kinds of respectability: banks, Hollywood, and the orbit of a sitting prime minister. First, the banks. In 2012 and 2013, Goldman Sachs helped one MDB raise about $6.5 billion across three bond offerings. The bank's fees, reported in later settlements, came in around $600 million. That is not a normal sovereign bond haircut. That is a number that should have set off a fire alarm. Goldman's Malaysia subsidiary later pleaded guilty in the United States, and the firm paid billions, including a 2020 DOJ resolution reported at $2.9 billion. Tim Leisner, a Goldman partner, pleaded guilty and cooperated. Roger Ng, another banker, was convicted. Joe Low was charged in the same cases. He did not walk into court. Understand what the bonds did. They did not just raise cash, they stamped it. A household name bank told the world this was nation building. And once that stamp exists, every later wire looks a little more like business. Second, Hollywood. Red Granite Pictures, The Wolf of Wall Street. A movie about a fraudster, financed, prosecutors later alleged, with money taken from a development fund on the other side of the planet. The money now had a red carpet and famous faces. Red Granite later settled with the United States. Leonardo DiCaprio returned gifts prosecutors said were tainted, including a Picasso and the Oscar once awarded to Marlon Brando. On opening night, it looked like cinema. Third, the Prime Minister's orbit. In 2013, about $681 million landed in personal accounts tied to Najib Razak. Najib called it a legal donation from Saudi royalty. Malaysian courts would later reject that defense. This is how, if you believe the U.S. filings, $4.5 billion stops looking like a crime. A bank stamps it. A movie spends it. A prime minister's account receives it. The yacht is just what the camera can see. That is the decoy. The machine is respectability. If the money had been dressed this well, what finally tore the costume? Paper, 2015. A blog run from London, Sarawak Report, starts posting what it says are leaked 1MDB emails and bank records. The Wall Street Journal follows with the $681 million in the Prime Minister's accounts. Suddenly, the brochure has a second set of pages. Malaysia's own investigators begin to look, and then the political weather turns. The Attorney General who opened a case is replaced. In July 2016, the U.S. Department of Justice files civil forfeiture complaints, seeking assets it says were bought with money taken from 1MDB. It becomes one of the largest kleptocracy actions the department has ever brought. The complaints name the yacht, the jet, the penthouses, and the art, and they name Joe Low as a central alleged conspirator. He is not in the courtroom when the papers are filed. In 2018, Malaysian voters end Najib Razak's government. New prosecutors reopen the fund. Najib is tried and convicted of abuse of power, criminal breach of trust, and money laundering tied to 1MDB. Appeals follow. The convictions stand. A former prime minister goes to prison. That is a court record, not an allegation. Joe Low is charged in the United States and in Malaysia. He denies wrongdoing. His lawyers call him a scapegoat, a businessman, and a friend, not a thief. He has never stood in a dock to test that claim. Equanimity is seized in Indonesian waters and sailed to Malaysia, forfeited, and sold. The jet is seized. The New York and Beverly Hills properties are seized. Paintings come off walls and into evidence. Across a chain of settlements, The United States describes recoveries running from hundreds of millions into more than $1 billion. The fixer does not appear. Where is he? Officially unconfirmed. Reporting has placed him, at various times, in China or Taiwan, always one photograph behind the present. The U.S. indictment remains open. He has not surrendered. So here is what the filings actually give you, stripped of the deck and the champagne. A fund is created to build a country. A man with no title stands next to it. Prosecutors say he helps design wires that look like statecraft. A bank stamps the bonds. A movie spends the proceeds. A prime minister's accounts receive a river of cash. When the papers leak, the yacht is what everyone photographs. But the yacht is not the mechanism. The yacht is the advertisement. Joe Low was never convicted. He has never stood trial. Prosecutors still say about $4.5 billion left 1MDB. A fixer, with no official job, allegedly turned a country's development fund into a private ATM, then vanished.